Hello, welcome to Chess with Simon. I'm Simon, and that's Chewy. And this is some ham, which is not fit for human consumption, but I had a small dinner, and so I might share it with Chewy at the end when we've looked at this wonderful game. This is my friend Nigel Moyse, Nigelico on Live Chess versus Michael 1842. Thank you for sending this in, Nigel. I know Nigel really well. We have had many games together in timed and correspondence chess, so this is a really high quality game. It's kind of FIDE master level game. D4, knight f6, c4, e6. Nigel is playing the white pieces. So here white allows the Nimzo Indian. Instead of that, black's playing d5. So we've got a queen's gambit declined. Knight f3 from white, a very reasonable move. And then black takes here. This is the Vienna variation of the queen's gambit declined. So this is a really challenging variation. So basically, you know, in the queen's gambit, black can take straight away, queen's gambit accepted. Or black can kind of hang in there, playing moves like bishop e7, h6, maybe b6, maybe knight bd7, looking for a c5 break, castling, and hold the center. This is a kind of hybrid where black accepts, but a bit later on. And, you know, once white has started to set, and black started to set up their structure. So it's a complex mix. In fact, what we'll see is, and this is really interesting, the game transposes more into something that looks like a semi-Slav defense. So black's position takes on the characteristics of a semi-Slav. And we'll see what that means. White's choosing e3 here. This is a big decision because you can play e4 here, leading to a much more concrete game. But white's playing e3. a6 from black. This is a really good move, most common move in the position. So the idea here is that when white takes on c4, black is able to play b5, hitting the bishop. You see this in the Catalan as well. Sometimes it hits a queen there, or even a knight there. On this occasion, it's hitting the bishop. In the Catalan, it's often hitting the queen there in the open Catalan. Bishop backs off. So this is clever because it's creating a beautiful square for that light square bishop, which is so often a problem piece in the Queen's Gambit declined. Here, it's got a marvellous diagonal, and as we'll see, it's put to some good use on that diagonal. White's castling, knight bd7 from black. So queen e2, c5. So I actually think this is a lot like a semi-Slav. The reason is because black has found active posts for many of his minor pieces. Black has got the c5 break-in, so black has achieved so much, but at the price of slower development of the king side and later castling. So it's a much riskier position. We'll see that black puts the queen on b6, is very typical of the semi-Slav. Which is a really nice spot for the queen, because the point is in the Queen's Gambit decline proper, it's often hard to find a square for the queen because black's a bit short of space, and often black's manoeuvres are about freeing up space for the queen. But in this line, there is no such problems. Rook d1, great move from white, and then the queen comes to b6. a4 from white, just, well, currently threatening to take the pawn on b5. Black stops the threat by the push here, but this is committal because all of a sudden it's relieving the tension on the d4 pawn. And now white, there's one version of this in the database, so this is a correct move. Actually, the engines really like this move, but it's rarely played. Just hitting the queen and moving it from that nice b6 square. And then the bishop backs off to c2. c2 is a decent square for the bishop. It's got lots of possibilities from there. I mean, you see it come there in the Spanish, you see it come there in a lot of openings. And then this is also quite a common semi-Slav. Often in the Botvinnik variation of the semi-Slav, you see this pawn b4, just hitting that knight, and the knight comes out to a4. This is a bit double-edged. This isn't particularly bad for white, but it certainly makes the game complicated. And black just keeps on going, just grabbing space and forcing the bishop back to b1. Also creating a really nice square for the black bishop, which is able to develop straight away onto a really useful square on b4. Ironically, that's the square it goes to for the Nimzo. And actually, it goes there in the Slav defence as well. White very sensibly just offers to swap his bishop that's locked in by the pawn chain for the much more active black bishop. Black takes a pawn, white takes a pawn, and now here we go, this bishop swooping down to take off the knight on f3, disrupting the pawns around white's king when white takes back. But white doesn't take back. White takes on b4 instead. Now, here are the complications. So, material is currently level. Black's queen is being hit by the bishop. Black's bishop is hanging. So the question is white just winning here? And the answer is, black has a super duper move. Perhaps you can find it. It's quite interesting to see if you can find this move for black. What we often look for in chess is a move that achieves two things at once. A really good chess move achieves two things at once. This move achieves three things. So Queen g5 achieves three things. So it stops the queen being attacked by the bishop, it defends the bishop on f3 by pinning the pawn, and it threatens checkmate on g2. So this is a super duper move. So quick material count. We've got equal numbers of minor pieces. We've got equal pawns. So we're equal in material. But, I mean, it's fair to say that black has some nasty threats around the white king. Nigel defends bishop queen f1, which is it's a good move. But the bishop on f3 is threatening the rook on d1. And actually, what the engine wants to do is take straight away. Now, Nigel's opponent chooses to play knight d5, hitting the bishop on b4, but actually now this bishop has a nice square on d6, and this sort of stops the black queen from coming across to the queen side again. So actually, instead of this sequence, the engine just wants to take straight away on d1, going an exchange up, and also just allowing the queen to come back to the queen side, push that bishop around a bit, because currently the bishop there on d6 is stopping black castling, which is a real issue. We talked about, didn't we, the fact that black left kingside development and castling late in the semi-Slav. I know this wasn't a semi-Slav, but it kind of was. And now we see that that's the risk. And actually this risk has crystallised, and the king is, to a degree, stuck in the centre. So black's picked up a whole exchange there, which is not to be sniffed at, but the engine thinks this is pretty equal. Put the rook on an open file, get the bishop onto a better square, attacking that pawn. Rook defends it, and also hitting that bishop on d6, that annoying bishop on d6, which has got a lovely square on a3 where it can be safe. And so black basically makes the decision, well, if I can't castle, then I'm going to create some threats on the king's side and create a route for my king to get to a bit more safety via f7. White's picking up a pawn, the king's getting to safety, so really I would say that lack of castling has cost black a pawn. Great square for the knight on c5. Black's rook is finally free to get into play, hitting the queen. Queen attacks the rook. Black exchanges off that really nice knight. Now, this rook move, I guess the rook's just attacked, right? So the rook's just moving away, so it's no longer attacked. I think bishop takes a6 wasn't ideal. Neither was black's response. I think what black needed to do there was just pin the bishop against the queen. But basically, black's playing for attack. White sidesteps that pawn and attacks the knight. But this clearly is a threat of checkmate in one, which needs to be addressed. White plays g3 to standard manoeuvre in these kind of positions. But of course, immediately we're worried about the queen landing on g2. Or we certainly should be. And not just that, the knight can move here to f4, creating the g-pawn's clearly pinned, creating all sorts of threats around the white king. So knight h3 check is immediately possible. And yeah, the combination of just that weak, very weak g2 square and having a knight hopping around is pretty stress-inducing. All of the white pieces are busy on the a file, so this must have felt a bit scary. But the bishop comes straight back. This is a great move, obviously, covering g2 and covering h3. So that's really useful. Queen comes in closer to allow the knight to check on h3 if it wants to, because of course swapping it for the bishop's going to feel really frightening because of that mate on g2. I mean, I've been caught by those things more times than we can ever talk about. Back comes the queen to defend. Actually, the engine wants queen d1 just to allow the queen immediate access to the f1 square. The check goes in. White really can't take that with the bishop, so move to the side. And the queen on c2 is covering f2, which was an important... This is the way Nigel's chosen to defend this. Important. Pawn h5. I mean, gosh, black just keeps on coming. You know, black's got... has played really dynamically and has put some real pressure on white here. So, queen... Why? Come on, let's try and work out this. Queen d2, why? I mean, there is a check on... There would be a check on f4 swapping the queens off, which would be very, very welcome. But right now, the knight is covering... I suppose what you have got... What white's threat is here is takes on h3, queen takes on h3, then there's a check on f4, and you can pick up the pawn on f3, which will be worth its weight in gold. So that is probably the most direct threat. King moves to make that go away. And now this is a good move. Just actually, I would say creating counterplay. Creating counter threats on the queen side. Basically, those two connected pawns are very close to becoming very dangerous. Rook a8. Now the engine here wants to play b5, and actually and then the counterplay becomes really critical, and those rooks become really tied down, trying to defend from those pawns queening, trying to stop those pawns queening, because those two connected pawns so far up the board. They become a real problem, and you know, preoccupy the black pieces. Bishop b2 from white, an exchange, and this allows black to pick up a pawn. White very sensibly, and this is the best move in the position, goes to swap the queens off, because the mating threats are just too much. Also, of course, that knight on h3 is hanging. And now we're going to say why it wasn't hanging the previous move. It wasn't hanging the previous move because I think the queen check on b1 might have been really, really unpleasant, stroke checkmate in 2. So it wasn't hanging. And actually, you probably can't even take it now because the queen check on b1 is still really horrible. But white wants to swap queens, and black is seduced by this queen b1 move. Actually, that wasn't the best, but black kind of goes for it because it does look really useful, doesn't it? Just pinning that bishop and attacking the other bishop. I mean, it's ever so sharp. Attacking the bishop on a1, pinning the bishop on f1. It looks like a super duper move, but white has a check here, and not just that, another check there. And it's a fork because white's able to pick up that knight, now defending his own bishop. Black gets a bishop back, so quick material count is equal. Basically, black is an exchange up, but white has two really nice connected pass pawns. I would slightly prefer white here on just positional and material grounds, but white also has a lot of dynamic chances. Queen takes here, check, and then the king can move here to defend the bishop. So it's basically white has a tactical solution to all the problems here. Rook comes across to move to e1 to intensify the pin, but white can simply take here on f3. Rook comes here, and then now white can defend the bishop. So by some smooth tactics, white is now 4 pawns for the exchange, and black just does not have a strategy. Basically, what's going to happen is white's going to queen a pawn, and black can't really create any counterplay or threats because that bishop on f1 is just defended twice. There's nothing else to attack it. It is what it is. So black was a good enough player to know that it was time for him to resign, and I am a good enough presenter to know it's time for Chewy to have some ham. So if I wave this ham around, my knowledge of Chewy tells me that he's appearing. There he is. Come on, mister. So, well done on that game, Nigel. It's been a bit of time since I've made a video, and it's been worth the wait, and it's been worth that. I want some of that ham, Chewy. Just give me a bit of it. Oh, yeah. We love it. I hope you're all well. And if you've enjoyed this, please hit the like button. And if you'd like to see more in the future, if you hit subscribe on the bell, we'll send you more. Keep well.